Uh, in this lecture, I'll be talking about what we call it as Hadoop, then HDFS, Hadoop distributed file systems, then what is MapReduce and Spark, and then we'll be talking about a few examples of big data algorithms apart from the properties of the big data. Okay. Why do we require this Hadoop? The reason is that you want to process huge data sets on large clusters of computers. Okay. Though it is very expensive to build, uh, but certainly what is requirement in terms of this, that you want to process the huge amount of data. When I say huge amount of data, that means I'm looking for maybe terabytes, petabytes, brontobytes, something like that, zettabytes sort of things. So these days, all these type of size of data is quite realistic in nature. Okay. Certainly, failure and other things are always be a part of clusters. Whenever you look for cluster of computers, certainly you need to handle it also. Some infrastructure should be in a way that it should be reliable, efficient, and easy to use. And best part of this Hadoop is it is open source and uh, based on Apache license also. This is typical what you can say Hadoop clusters looks like. You can see that there is aggregation switch, then there are rack switches. Uh, Obviously, internals of aggregation switches will be of 8 gigabit, whereas others will be having uh, node will be having 1 gigabit. So it's two level architecture. All these nodes are commodity computers. Obviously, each rack can have 30 to 40 nodes. As far as uplink of from rack is concerned, you can have 3 to 4 gigabit, whereas rack internal will be 1 gigabit. Okay. Certainly, this is not fixed. Uh, it can be increase or decrease based on the requirement, but this is ideally available in the hardware. And what is Hadoop distributed file system is actually this Hadoop distributed file system provides very large file system. Certainly, you can see that you may be looking for 10K of nodes, that is 10,000 nodes. Maybe looking for petabytes and more. You can handle 100 million files also. So such large distributed file system we are looking for. This is very much you can say this is for failure. Uh, you can say handling, where actually the files may be replicated across the nodes. I'll let you know. Even not only within the racks, it can be replicated across the rack also. So obviously, the entire hardware is capable of detecting the failures and recovering as well. This is optimized for batch processing. So obviously data location exposed so that computations can move to where data resides, and obviously it provides high aggregate bandwidth also. Okay. Single name space for the entire cluster. Like I can tell you that you can see that what is happening is the HDFS architecture. This is name node, which is actually the server. Let me So this is your the server, and these are the slave nodes. Okay. So obviously, we may have 3 nodes in rack 1, 2 nodes in rack 2 also. Okay. So client can actually read and write. This name node is actually having all type of metadata, say name, replicas, and all knowledge-based data will be in name node, and all the instructions will be given to this slave nodes for execution of the processes. Certainly, these individual data nodes will be having uh, tasks and executions instructions. Okay, so that is need to be there. What if we are saying that there is a replication part, as you can see in this is that the same data is replicated at 2 different nodes, and not necessarily that it is in the same rack, even in different racks. The idea is very simple, that if rack 1 fails, still I can make use of this rack 2 to get this data. Okay, so it is actually by some permutations we actually replicate the data across the racks and across the nodes. Like for example, if I'm looking for this, then you can see that what is happening is that this 2 is replicated, then 4 is replicated, then 3 is replicated, this 1 is replicated, and this is 5 is replicated. So what I mean is that actually you are replicating each blocks of the data at least once. Even you can go for multiple instance also, but at least one instance of replication is advisable. Okay. The entire Hadoop cluster architectures will look like this. Here is the client. Then you submit your job to the you can say name server or main server. So this is name node, which is actually a entire master of the Hadoop distributed file system. So there is a job tracker in the name node, which actually take care of tracking the jobs. So this is task tracker in all the slave nodes. You have data at slave nodes, and then obviously you can actually execute algorithms in each of these slave nodes wherever required. Okay. So that is what happens. Only this name node having the information that where what data is and how to allocate the jobs to these name nodes. Okay, fine. But there is a possibility that even if required, then these name nodes can share some of the results also, okay, if required. These are not exhaustive in nature. All such companies are actually using this entire Hadoop. So what actually the goal of this distributed file system is that you move workers to the data. That means store data at local disk of nodes in the cluster, and then start up the workers on the node that has the data local. That means what we are doing is that, as I told you, that these are nodes. So if you have data, you divide data like this, D1, D2, D3, and then if you want to execute some algorithm one, then actually what you are doing is that you are not calling this data somewhere else, rather than this algorithm is executed at locally on these nodes. This is what we have. The reason why we are doing it, that certainly if suppose all the data may not be called in one RAM call, because RAM cannot hold huge actually size of the data. Okay. So normally there is one is very much is private to the Google, that is known as Google file system. This is also Google MapReduce. Previously I think maybe 10 years back, the entire Google was actually maintained over this Google file system, and processing was done on MapReduce framework. Now they have moved to Spark and all. Okay. For public use, for research, study, and other things, they have released variations of this as HDFS, Hadoop Distributed File System, which is also a component of Hadoop. Okay. What actually is happening? It actually pursuing divide and conquer technology. Simple, what you have is that you have work. So you just divide work into like this. Work 1, 2, 3. So you divided this. Then you assign worker. That means you are actually moving these works to the data nodes. And then all results are generated. And at somewhere you are actually combining the results here. So this is what the strategy we are actually applying on this particular architecture. Work comes divided, assigned, results generated, and then assembling of results. Fine. Like suppose there is one example of what we call it as word count. That suppose you have a large amount of say documents where you are looking for counting the words. So what you can do is that you can actually divide it this particular partitioning of the data and you can store in the different nodes. Then counting can be performed, all counting can be merged, and you will be getting the results out of it. What is parallelization challenges? So the question comes, how do we assign work units to worker? What if we have more work units than workers? Okay. That means suppose you have divided work into 7 and suppose you are only available 6 workers. So what will happen in that case? What if worker need to share partial results? Certainly what you require is the data node can interact each other or not. How do we aggregate partial results? That means suppose there are several iterations to be executed, then if suppose there is a need that partial results can be joined and again uh, shared to all workers, can it be possible? Yes, it is possible. I will talk about all this. How do we know that all workers are finished? And what if workers die? That means if some term system failed, then what will happen? Can we do that? And obviously, as I already told you, that in due to that only we have replicated the files and data blocks. Okay. What are the issues actually comes when you are talking about managing multiple workers? That means huge number of clusters of nodes you are managing it. Uh, the problem which comes is that we don't know the order in which workers are running. Also, we don't know when workers interrupt each other, and we also don't know in order which worker access shared data. That means some if there is some sharing data is available, then how it works. So what we need in this case is that we need some sort of semaphores like locking and unlocking techniques, some condition variables like wait, notify, broadcast like that, some sort of barriers which can be utilized for all these management. So, and all these is provided in the framework. The best part is, but still there is some problems still be in place. Like you never know that when deadlock can occur, rest conditions and many more could be possibilities. Certainly, some like failure, like catastrophic failures, you cannot handle it. So, still problem is there, but What you need to do is, or you can say that what is the moral of the story is that you cannot be, you can say that always be sure that everything is going well, rather than always try to be careful while executing the processes. Okay. MapReduce is a programming framework for distributed computing. Obviously, it uses divide and conquer methods to break down the complex big data problems into smaller units of work and then process them parallel. So it is a distributed and parallel. So these two, you can say, is the motivation behind MapReduce. Uh, like you can see that as far as Google is concerned, they are processing like big data sets. Just imagine this particular light, and I think probably this is more as on today. This has actually goes like maybe it may be double right now. This is old information. So obviously, what you read is that computations will be termed as map and reduce function. In this, what it is actually. So what we are doing is we are iterating over large number of records. We extract information of interest. We also do shuffling and sorting of intermediate results. Then at last we are doing reduce part, which is actually aggregating all intermediate results and then generating final output. So you are doing so many things. So what you need to do is that user need not to worry about all these. Rather than you provide abstraction to the user, that you just submit your work and specify the requirement, and the rest the framework will do that. Okay. MapReduce work on two functions. MapReduce where actually key value pairs are there. This is key and this is value. Like suppose what we are happening is that in case of word count, I can say that triple IT is my first key and then value is say 4. That means in a particular data, triple IT word appears 4 times. So that you can write. What does it mean? Reduce is that obviously if data is distributed over different nodes, then obviously triple IT will have 4, triple IT will have 2, triple IT will have 1. Then this need to be aggregated. So this you get it. Okay. So this is what we do it. So the framework actually handles scheduling, data distributions. It also handles synchronizations, whether it is shorting, shuffling of intervals. It also handles the errors and faults also. Okay. So what we do is that all algorithm executions are expressed in MRCP, map, reduce, combine, partition. Okay. So, and abstraction is provided that need not to know about reducers, need not to know about what particular mapper is processing or what particular reducer is processing. Okay. This looks like this, that very big data distributed over nodes, map functions executed, results generated, then reducer actually produce the results. Simple. This is one example. What is happening in this case is that you can see that this key value and then these one same keys will be aggregated and you are getting this. Okay. Same key with keys aggregated. So this is what happening. Okay. For example, see what is happening here is the brown fox is having one. Similarly, this. So this is input, individual data nodes, map function executed. This you get it. Now shuffling and sorting is done. Once it is done, then reducer will reduce the results. If two reducer are used, then this can be done. Okay. Always remember there is no necessary that same number of map and reducer will be used. Less number of reducer will also be possible. So this is combiner, which is actually, you can see that what is happening out here is that you can see that what is the is 1 and the is 1. So what we are doing is that all instances of the is actually generated here, but they are not combining it. So by introducing this combiner, we can perform this part. So that actually reduces the work of reducer. So this combiner will be used in between mapper and reducer. Okay. Then how this Spark actually, I think something around 2014, the MapReduce, Google actually get rid of this MapReduce framework and they move to the Spark. The reason is very simple, is for fast processing. You cannot say that Spark can actually completely replace the MapReduce. The reason is very simple, that as far as Spark is concerned, this works well with some size of data. Whereas once you go for higher data sizes, then still we rely on MapReduce, because so what we have is that we say that Spark, you can say that it is Leopard, which is fast, and still it is actually strong, and whereas MR, I can say it's a bear, stronger than Spark and can actually hold heavy weights also. Okay, so that is what we have. So depending upon requirement, actually, even you'll see that in some cases the Spark is also using MapReduce framework for processing the data. Okay, so only the thing is the configuration will be different. So it's a open source cluster computing framework, simple real-time generated data it can handle. And best part is that it is actually built on top of the Hadoop MapReduce. Okay. The difference is very simple, that it is memory based, whereas the MapReduce was disk resident. So it's memory resident. Spark is actually working on memory resident approach, whereas MapReduce was working on disk resident approach. Okay. The Spark was originally written in Scala, and then support was provided with Java, Scala, Python, and R also. Okay. These are the components of the Spark. You have Spark SQL, then Spark Streaming, then machine learning library, then you have Graph also. Okay. So this figure was taken from this particular source. Spark SQL is actually one of the component which actually used for structured data processing and semi-structured data processing, whereas Spark Streaming is used for allowing highly scalable data and high throughput with fault tolerant stream processing of live data streams. Okay, this MLlib is actually consists of all machine learning libraries, and it actually executes in high speed, almost all high quality algorithms. GraphX is again another API which is actually where graph algorithms can be used. So it is a network graph analytics engine and data store. So, as I told you that there is a difference that Spark has been found to run 100 times faster in memory and 10 times faster on disk also. Whereas Spark is used to sort 100 terabytes of data 3 times faster than Hadoop MapReduce on 1/10 of the machine. Okay. So Spark is faster on machine learning algorithms such as name-based, k-means and all. Okay. So I'm just having this like now we are having all these in place. We know that what is Hadoop, what is a Hadoop distributed file system, then what is a MapReduce framework, and then what is Spark framework.
Sir, just go back to your previous slide, sir.
Hello?
Sir, could you go back to your previous slide?
Yes.
Okay. Spark is on the machine learning applications.
Is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. So now we'll see that what actually the big data we are talking about. Normally, just like I think in the previous session, it was one question was asked: what is small size and large size? Now the question is: what is large size and big? So is that same or different? So obviously, there is no concrete difference between large data and big data. We do not know that both are same, or it is actually, I think, still, I think we all are not clear in that. But what we are clear in some way, referring the big data, is that we have defined certain set of parameters upon which we'll say that, okay, if these parameters present in the data, then I can say this is my big data. Okay. So I'm just looking for those parameters. So what traditionally, if you look for big data definitions, so it's a term for a collection of data sets so large and complex, and that it becomes difficult to process using on-hand database management tools or traditional data processing applications. Okay. Normally, what we actually expect from big data is that it is high in volume, high velocity, and high variety is there. When I say velocity, that means we are talking about high data rate. Variety means it may holds different types of data, maybe multimedia, maybe video, image, text, numerical data, or discrete or any sort of data. So like different types of data could be possible in this case, structured and unstructured as well. Okay. So as you can see, we have started with something like byte, then kilobyte, then megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, then petabytes, then exabytes. After that, we have zettabytes, yottabytes, brontobytes, and even we are looking for more. So we do not know where we will stop. We are actually drowning in the data, okay? And we are just trying to swim on in that particular pond. And believe me that we are not swimming as good as is expected, but we are trying to do that. As far as big data processing framework is concerned, so you always look for mining complex and dynamic data, information sharing and data privacy is part of that. You also look for model fusions, some mining, sparks, certain and
Excuse me,
incomplete
sir.
data. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to disturb you in between, but I wanted to
Yes.
request that if you can send these PPTs to us, please, sir. It's a request, humble request.
Okay. Okay. After. Okay. I'll share it after the lecture. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Fine. Uh, so. Uh, so this is a big data application and knowledge, and actually there are so many platforms where actually you can process this part. So this is what we look for. Apart from these three, these properties or characteristics added later on, and we believe that all these are important for us. Okay. Now one by one, I'll just let you know that what actually this means. Okay. Some examples of velocity, that we say that almost 2.5 million queries on Google's are performed every minute probably. Around 20 million photos are viewed, and I think if you go for today's data, then certainly it may be more. On YouTube, every minute we upload 100 hours of video, and certainly more if you go for today's data. Every minute we are sending 200 million emails, and this now is approaching this. Okay. So something like that in a minute. Okay. So such huge data we are generating in the environment. Just imagine about the data you are generating. Obviously, what you have is that data is generated by machines, some networks, some human interactions on social media. So as far as analytics is concerned, massive data is available. Only the thing is how efficiently you can manage it. That's the point. Another example of huge data generation is this. You know that Airbus is a very famous, I think, air transport. Just imagine that every 30 minutes Airbus generating 10 terabytes of data. Okay, and one flight can generate 640 terabytes. Okay, so just imagine about what amount of data these actually flights are generating for you. And obviously people are actually doing some analytics on that. Okay. Some other examples like self-driving cars generates 2 petabytes of data every year. And believe me that every 2 years, whatever data today is, after 2 years it will be double. Okay. So just imagine that in this year itself, compared to 2011, whatever data we have will be 50 times. So huge data is available to us. What variety? Just now I told you that variety, that means I'm just looking for different type of data, maybe email, photo, audio, PDFs, or some numericals, discrete, continuous, sort of any structured any sort of data, we call it as variety. So I'm not sticking with one type of data rather than variety of data I'm looking for. What does it mean, the value? So it says that having access to big data is no good unless we can turn it into value. Okay. So obviously companies are working on it. They are generating amazing value from the big data. Like suppose discovering a consumer preference or sentiments, or making relevant offer by locations, or identifying a piece of equipment that is about to fail. Like suppose in machine it is very much useful. So data you have, only the thing is how far knowledge you can generate, that is actually value. So challenge in terms of considering the human will be that learning to ask the right questions, recognizing patterns, what assumptions will be there, and predicting behaviors. All these will be in place. The next is veracity, which is nothing but the question always be that are the results meaningful for the given problem space? So it is actually talking about data quality and understandability. Okay. So next is variability. This is very interesting, and the example I took from one of the author's slide, and it is very interesting that what is actually variability is. Sometimes variability is confused with variety, but just try to see this. That suppose a bakery that sells 10 different breads. This is variety. Okay. But what is variability is that imagine that you go to that bakery 3 days in a row. Every day you buy the same type of bread, but it tastes and smells different. This is variability. Okay. So there is a possibility of variability in the data also. Not necessarily that in all the data you'll be getting it, but obviously this actually is having a one of the important. And next is visualizations. As I told you that always remember that all patterns should be simple to understand. It should be simple, it should have utility, it should have novelty and all. So the simple means representation should be in a way that it can be understood by all the decision makers. So we have certain, you can say, application programs where actually you can visualize the data so that it can be easily understood and easily can be used for decisions. Okay, so it is actually talking about improving the readability of the pattern. Sources, obviously user is one source, application, system, sensors, all these are sources of the data generations, generating large and growing files like anything. Okay. So smartphones, Internet of Things, like emails, blogs, Googles, YouTubes, all these are actually source of data points generation. So now what we have is, we understood that what is big data is, and what are the characteristics of the big data. We got it that certainly at one go I cannot analyze the entire big data. So we gone through that, okay, I can go for distributed and parallel processing. I have frameworks like Hadoop and then MapReduce, Spark and all. And there are some sort of application programs and application languages are available, like you can see NoSQL, Mongo, even application like anything, which is actually varying from which can be used on mobile applications also, which can be used on desktop applications, which can be used on servers, which can be used on clusters. Okay? So that is what. So I'm just giving you a few examples where actually you can make use of this framework. I think this is known to you. I have discussed yesterday. So I'm the same examples is there, that how this a priori algorithms can be used for association mining. Now, as already I told you that a priori is not good for larger data set. Certainly it is not good for bigger also. So how to actually execute this particular algorithm for a large data or big data? So it says that I can make use of this parallel processing. So what we are doing is that you can see that I have divided, this is one instance of example, this is an example, that I have divided the transactions into 3 data points, or this is, you can say, data nodes, say CS1, CS2 and CS3. So these are three computers or three processors where actually we are having it. Now, what we are doing is that a priori can be used or can be executed at map using map function. So these all mappers are executing it. So what is the idea behind a priori is that go for candidate generation and then go for large data set. Okay. Then similarly next iteration C2, L2, this is what happened. Certainly at one go, the entire a priori cannot be executed at one data nodes. Certainly what is required is that intermediate results should be shared within this all data nodes. So what is happening is with the help of local data, you are generating candidate set. With the help of data, generating the candidate set. With the help of data, you are generating candidate sets. Now all these candidate sets will be shared to each other so that they can generate L1. Okay, which is common to all the data nodes. Okay, the reason is that this L1 is actually representation of all the data, and certainly to generate C2 again we are going for this local data itself. Same way when I'll go for next iteration, then certainly L2 will be generated while sharing the intermediate results, and likewise I'll be moving forward. At last I'll be getting the results which can be merged at using reduce functions, and it will be done. So by using mapper, combiner and reducer, we can apply this parallel and distributed processing of a priori. Okay, so this algorithm works in this way that, as I told you, that map functions will be executed at each of the data nodes, then reducer is capable of generating the large item sets. Okay, and in each iterations the intermediate results will be shared with all the mappers. Fine, this is what happening. This is one work which is done by one of my research scholar and was published in one of the IEEE system journal. So this is one what I'm just going for. What we have done in this case is actually we have applied map reduce model for FP growth. Okay. So this example we have done in last class. You know that how to generate this particular FP tree. What we did is that we have applied this map reduce, and what we did is this is my transaction data, and I have created three data nodes having this particular thing, and using this I have generated this FP tree using this and using this. So once we have this, now use all three are actually generated by three different data nodes. So now I have to actually express the entire data set into FP tree. So what we need to do is that we have to merge this. So the merging is that I have applied this, that these two is merged like this, and then this resultants are merged with this, and we'll get this. Always remember what is happening is merging is not so hard. You can see what we have done is that you can see the root and then there's 2 and then 1. Okay, here is root, then 2, 1, 1. Okay, these colors are talking about different sets. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, so based on the color I can generate this. So what we have done is this. Same color will actually, if in the same flow is there, so traversing from root to leaf, if the same flow with in this and this lies, then certainly it can be merged and the increments can be done. Otherwise, separate branch will be created. So similarly, this we keep. So this actually represents the FP tree for the large data. Certainly, this might not be the optimal solution of the problem, but it is actually one of the solutions of the problem. And the best part is that I can execute larger data sets, and using FP growth, I can generate this, and certainly I can generate some associations, which is significant. We have seen and we have actually compared the data with the other approaches of similar type, and we found that actually our approach is better than others. Okay, so these are differences. These examples I have done in the last class, so you know that how this k-means operates. What is the thing is that how this k-means can be applied parallelly or distributed manner. So what is happening is you have D, you have partition D into this, and so n number of data nodes created, then mappers will execute the k-means algorithm, and then reducer is capable of generating the global clusters out of it. Now, what is the idea behind is that you cannot go for k-means to be executed at one go in the one data nodes, and the final results will be merged at reducer. The problem is that the moment I divide the data into different data nodes, then whatever clusters the k-means generating for different data nodes. So suppose first data node generates 2 clusters, next data node generates 5 clusters, and obviously the mean of all these clusters are not uniform or same, so its merging becomes difficult. So what it says is that to actually make it possible for the merging process, what it says that it after every iteration of k-means, the intermediate results will be shared with all the mappers. So what it says is that what you do is that, okay, fine, you got this mean of, you start, say, data nodes, you talk about k equals to 2, sorry, if I'm fixing k equals to 2, then certainly two clusters will be generated by 2 data nodes. I'm sorry, I've just done the mistake. Only two this. Now the question is, these two means and these two means are different. What I required is these two means should be uniform so that I can merge at last point. So this can be done by using this. What it does is that at some first iterations, we start with some random 2 means generated. So obviously what we'll do is that we'll take the same random mean for all the data nodes, and for next iteration we merge centroids to get the global centroids, and then that will be passed to all the data nodes. So what will happen is in the next iteration all will actually work on the same set of means. So whenever you have to converge or you have to come out from this process, then what will happen is at last iterations the means are actually uniform in nature, and then merging could be possible. So this with same mean this could be merged and same mean this could be merged. So this is what this figure is actually talking about, that particular process. Fine. So all these detailing is there in terms of MapReduce. Last, this algorithm, I think this already this has been discussed in the previous session, so I'm not going it again. So you know that how these DBs can work. This is what the MR MapReduce based DBscan implementation is there. These are the components. What is the problem or what is the issue in this is that you have say generated D1, D2 and D3. Now you have applied DBscan in all. Now you have generated set of clusters. Obviously the number of clusters may be different and the shape of clusters will be different also. Okay, like that. Now the question is, to generate the global clusters, how this merging process could be performed. So this particular slide actually talks about the merging procedure of the different clusters generated by different data nodes in the MapReduce framework. What it says is that, okay, consider one cluster S1 and another cluster S2. Then generate inner region and outer region. This is nothing but epsilon distance. So with epsilon distance, create inner region, and with epsilon distance, create outer region. Then same way, inner region of this and outer region of this. So what you do is that which is actually close by the region which is close to this another particular clusters regions, where actually you just consider the inner and outer region of this part. Randomly choose a point. Go for epsilon distance, create a circle. Then merging conditions will be that if suppose P becomes within this epsilon distance neighborhood, if few points are in S1 and few points are in S2, then these two can be merged. And if not, these two cannot be merged. Then the question is why we are merging if few points are in S1 and S2? The reason is very simple. Suppose this is point which is actually of S1 and this is the point which is of S2. If this is within the epsilon distance of these points, then this is density reachable to this and this is directly density reachable to this. And you know that this set of points is density reachable to all these set of points, and this set of points is all density reachable of all these set of points. Then by virtue of that density reachability, these two set of points are actually density reachable. So hence we can merge. So you have to investigate each of the clusters with combination of each of the clusters of all the data nodes clusters. So if it is N1, N2 and N3, then these number of combinations will be investigated, and then whether merging and not merging is actually decisions could be taken with the help of this particular concept. Okay, so you'll generate the global cluster out of it. So that is what MRDBs talks about. Apart from so this is what MR is. We actually have already in place some MR based random forest also. Just I'm giving as I'm running out of time. So what we do is actually just now I think probably one of you have asked me that what is ensemble classifier. So this is one example of ensemble classifier in this case, where actually random forest is referred as ensemble classifier because it consists of many decision tree and output of class, that is node of the classes output by individual trees. Okay, so what is happening is that you can generate multiple trees, and then you actually introduces some optimization here, and that actually talks about ensembling of techniques here. So by using majority of voting, these classes can be defined and you get the final class out of this. So this is what happening in the random forest. These are some elementary knowledge about how this MR implementation of random forests comes in picture. What are the research issues actually is open for us? Then certainly the applicability of the algorithms for big data analysis is one research issue which is always open for us. Till now, so many algorithms are actually, you can say, altered or presented in a form that we can actually make use of those algorithms in parallel and distributed manner, and can be fed into Spark and MR to get the process done. Obviously, it always depends on scalability of the algorithms, whether the algorithms are scalable enough or not. Since the moment we move to sampling or we move to distributed processing, then certainly accuracy improvement is one issue which always comes, because what we look for is one of the optimal solutions rather than the most optimal solutions. Okay. And then certainly real-time analysis, which is actually these days are very much important, because you will always look for that real-time stream data is coming and how to analyze such data and all. And obviously big data frameworks are widely used for the similar case, but still issues are involved, and you can take up any of the issues and you can actually pursue your research. So this is all what I plan to discuss with you.